Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation right here, TYT Nation. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend and time off. We're back. Got a lot of great stories, a lot of interesting stuff, a couple of fun stories, and a little bit of disaster. So it's the usual mix today, including important stuff about the Mueller investigation. I know a lot of you, some of you, don't really care too much about that, but I think it's interesting what's going on here. Then, of course, the reaction to that is amazing. And we, of course, have pure madness in the White House. But then again, not really different. We're also going to talk about the teacher strike. That's something that really is important. I love that, by the way. We also have another Florida teacher who is a white supremacist. Surprise! We've got that. We'll talk about that. We have thoughts and prayers and Martin Shkreli. So lots of fun stuff. It's going to be a good show. So if you haven't already, please give us a like and share. It helps us out. Okay. So where do I begin? Let's just jump into the stories then. Okay. Now, the hits keep coming for Martin Shkreli, also once known as Farmer Bro, who had a lot of money. Turns out he's in a lot of trouble due to how he actually got that money. So that's interesting. So the newest, of course, news relating to Shkreli is that he is now forced to pay back $7.3 million. Now, he was recently convicted for defrauding his investors. So that's where a lot of this money comes from. Now, what's interesting is Martin Shkreli, again, you know he's absolutely unbearable. This is the guy who brought the one and only Wu-Tang album. So he's got to give that up, and he's also got to give up a Picasso painting. And you know what? I don't feel bad at all for him. Now, U.S. District Judge Kiyo Matsumoto in Brooklyn said the assets Shkreli could forfeit to satisfy the judgment include $5 million from brokerage account and his stake in Vera Pharmaceuticals, one of the drug companies he founded. So, look, he would go through and he would found drug companies, and then he would mislead his investors, and then he would spend their money basically on propping himself up and creating new drug companies, and then, of course, misleading investors, on and on and on. So it's pretty clear that, look, he took advantage of his investors in order to make money for himself. That's the kind of guy Martin Shkreli is. Now, I'm trying to figure out who's worse because, like I said, before Ajit Pai got on the scene, Martin Shkreli was the worst person on the internet. Now you have Ajit Pai. Who's got the more punchable face? I mean, maybe I should do a poll. They're both really, really shady, really, really shitty people who have done really, really shitty things. But I guess, look, you want to ask me, of course, my opinion is Ajit Pai because he's literally destroying the internet. But at the same time, look, Martin Shkreli has probably literally destroyed people's lives by hiking up the prices of certain drugs. For example, Daraprim, which he raised the price of somewhere around 700%. It's insanity. It's insanity. But he is everything that is wrong with not only healthcare and in the pharmaceutical industry, but also with American capitalism. So, look, that's my thought on that. No, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It wasn't 700%. It was around $700. He actually raised it by 5,000%, the price of Daraprim. So it's even worse than I remembered. So now a jury found Shkreli guilty last August of securities fraud. He was actually sitting in prison for a while because he was, he did not make bail. Good. I think that's something that definitely he should definitely continue to stay in jail. Maybe it's a humbling experience, because certainly that guy, out of anybody, needs to be humbled. Okay. One more thing, too. I do want to add that he will be held responsible for $10.4 million in losses, including all the money his investors entrusted to his hedge funds. Now, she said that regardless of the investors' ultimate gains, Shkreli got their money in the first place through fraud. Although the $10.4 million, according to Reuters, will result in a higher recommended sentence under federal guidelines, Matsumoto is not required to follow those specific guidelines. So basically, she's able to use judgment and her human judgment to be able to basically give Shkreli what he deserves. Good. Again, one of the worst people in the world. Okay. At least in the United States. Moving on. The special counsel Robert Mueller is now turning his attention towards Donald Trump and his immediate associates. Now, this is interesting because this goes beyond what they were actually, or what the investigation was actually doing before. Now, according to The Hill, special counsel Robert Mueller has requested various documents tied to President Trump specifically and a number of his associates, as according to multiple reports across different networks. Now, Mueller has subpoenaed a witness, and we don't know who this witness is, for all communications between that person and a number of people, including President Trump, with the requested documents, including emails, work documents, text messages, telephone logs, and other records spanning back to November of 2015. Now, who are these people? Well, they include Hope Hicks. Now, this is communications between their witness and Hope Hicks, Stephen Bannon, Roger Stone, Carter Page, Michael Cohen, Keith Schiller, Rick Gates, Corey Lewandowski, and Paul Manafort. So that is a pretty big group of Trump insiders, people that were close to the president. Despite the fact that every one of these people now, Trump's going to be like, oh, no, hardly even talk to him, ever. No, witch hunt. Did I mention that it was a witch hunt? It's a witch hunt. Now, okay, so look, some of these names are really, really big, especially considering that Hope Hicks is on here. Hope Hicks is one of Trump's, or was one of Trump's closest advisors. That's somebody that Trump turned to. Look, and I don't know if I believe the rumors, but there are rumors going around that they had a little bit more of a closer relationship than just being an advisor. But regardless, she was a pretty close advisor, and we know how Trump has no ability to. He has no personal restraint, no ability to hold himself off from saying stupid things. So look. Does she know something? I don't know. It's Stephen Bannon. Now, Bannon, look, a lot of this entire thing, of course, this investigation is, a lot of it is based on collusion. And the rest of it, and I think the most important part of it, is actually on financial crimes related to the Trump empire. Now, I think you're going to have a lot more success going after Donald Trump if you talk about his crooked finances. Wonderful. So we're going to do that. And I think that's the most interesting part of that about this. Now, that said, Stephen Bannon, I don't think Stephen Bannon knows anything. Stephen Bannon is too much of a nationalist. And that's me defending Stephen Bannon, okay? He's a white nationalist. Do you think he's going to be hanging out with and sanctioning talks with Russia? No, of course not. I don't think he's at all interested in it. Nonetheless, you also have Roger Stone. Roger Stone, very interesting character on that. He actually came up with some of the theories that President Trump is going to fake mental illness or whatever to try to get out of this investigation. I don't know. But Carter Page is actually one of the most interesting people, followed by Hope Hicks. In fact, look, we know a lot about Carter Page. Before getting into the Trump campaign, this was, pre-2015. So this is pre-Trump campaign. There was an FBI investigation into a Russian spy ring. Now, look, did the Russians spy on us? Absolutely. Do we spy on the Russians? Absolutely. Do we spy on our own allies? Do we spy on Germany? Yes. Does Germany spy on us? Probably. We spy on each other, even if we're allies, and especially if we're not allies. So, look, the revelation that there was a Russian spy ring is not really that big of a deal because, look, countries spy on each other. They want to get advantages over each other. Of course, that's geopolitics for you, 101. Now, how Carter Page played into it is that Russian spy ring tried to recruit Carter Page. They described him as an ambitious climber eager to make money in Russia's energy sector, which is primarily fossil fuel. That is one reason why we should be against Russia, because they're trying to push fossil fuels on the world. If you had a problem with Hillary Clinton pushing fracking on the world, then you should also have a problem with Russia pushing oil and fracking onto the world. It's the same thing. Governments pushing fossil fuels in order to make money. We as progressives are against that. Now, Victor Podobny, this is an officer in the SVR, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Agency. He told his boss, Igor Sporyshev, that, quote, this is in reference to Carter Page, he got hooked on Gazprom. It's obvious that he wants to earn lots of money. Money through corruption. Now, Podobny is officially an attaché to the Russian mission of the UN. Now, he told Page that he would work with Sporyshev as Russia's trade representative in New York to win contracts for Page. In fact, quote, this is Podobny telling Sporyshev on April 8th, 2013, quote, he went to Moscow and forgot to check his inbox, but he wants to meet when he gets back. I think he's an idiot and forgot who I am. Podobny noted that Page wrote him emails in Russian to, quote, practice, and said that he flies to Moscow more than I do. So, yes, Carter Page is definitely a foreign agent. So I think he's really interesting, and I would, if I were Mueller, I would want to see contacts between Carter Page and anybody else that Carter Page had communications with, and what Carter Page told the rest of the campaign, because this really hinges on whether or not Trump knew about this stuff beforehand and was fine with it. So we're trying to figure out what Trump actually knew about this whole thing. But I am kind of curious, who is that witness? That is an unnamed witness that Mueller is trying to get documents from. Could it be George Papadopoulos? I don't know. He did make a plea deal with the FBI earlier, but you would think that we already have all the information from him. Could it be Michael Flynn? I don't know. He's unnamed, or she is unnamed, so we're not entirely sure what that person may or may not know. But that is very, very interesting. Now, another piece of this, which is also interesting, is that NBC News reported last week that Mueller's team is asking questions about whether Trump knew about hacked emails from Clinton's campaign before the public found out. Now, look, I thought those emails were very, very important. That's, of course, I'm referring to WikiLeaks, because we found out the DNC machinations against Bernie Sanders and how they were helping the media not only elevate Donald Trump during the election, but also to crush Bernie Sanders during the primary and to prevent any progressive from getting into office and challenging the neoliberal establishment. Now, WikiLeaks, of course, says, "Oh no, we didn't give him access to that. We didn't hack anything. Our sources are not Russian. Whether you believe them, that's really up to you." But that's what they're saying. We didn't have any contact with the Russians. We didn't really have any contact with the Trump campaign or anything like that. We just released files that we released emails from the DNC. And again, I think that their role in doing that was incredibly important. And taught us and showed us a lot of what we already knew, but also highlighted the corruption inside of the establishment. But nonetheless, the subpoena indicates that Mueller may be focused not just on what Trump campaign's aides had known and when they knew it, but also on what Donald Trump himself had known. And that's what's really important, because it shows that this investigation is now turning towards Donald Trump. Now, look, on collusion, I don't know if Donald Trump's smart enough to collude with Russia. I don't think has enough patience. I think there's a lot of progressives out there, or, well, not progressives, I should say more members of the liberal establishment, that think, no, Donald Trump had this whole evil plan to go and win the election. No, I think he's just an idiot and took advantage of what he thought was a good deal. Again, I don't have any proof of this, but knowing Donald Trump from, studying him and what he does, he doesn't have, like, the patience or the brain power to hatch a scheme in order to win an election. He's an idiot, and he probably, again, no proof here, but I'm just speculating at this point. I think he took advantage of an offer. Oh, no, you help me win? You help me be a winner? Okay, what do I do for you? Oh, the sanctions? I can do that. Which he hasn't done, but he also hasn't enforced any new sanctions that Congress passed overwhelmingly. That should be a little bit of an issue. And he refuses to protect our own elections. Now, here's the thing. I actually do care about interference, not just Russian interference, but any interference from a foreign power. I know, looking at American interference into other countries' elections, I know that, look, that's not something that I would want to be, have happen to my country. I don't want other countries meddling in our elections. I don't want to meddle in other people's elections. So knowing that perspective, having that perspective of being in a country that loves to meddle in other elections, I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong when they meddle in ours. I think it's wrong when we meddle in theirs. So we need to, but the conversation that we're having, unfortunately, a lot of people think that if you're going to take a stand and protect yourself from meddling, well, then you've got to go to war. No, I'm not at all in that position. I'm not at all in that camp. What I think we should do to protect our own elections is we should worry about making sure that our elections, and I'm not saying that our elections were hacked or anything like that, but I'm saying that if you move away from machines and go to paper ballots, well, that's the way to really solve it. Hand-counted paper ballots. You make sure that they're 100% verifiable, the results, and that everything is accountable. And another way to help with to make sure that there is no ambiguity in elections, make sure that more and more people get involved. Vote. I mean, look, universal registration, that'd go a long way. You can't mess with voter registration if everyone's registered. You can't really mess with voting machines if we all have paper ballots. There are simple ways that we can actually fix our election system and actually make it better for Americans, because really, and I've said this before, our elections are more at stake from being, or I should say, our elections are more susceptible to right-wing voter suppression than we are from Russia or other countries, even though that they have attempted to meddle. I think we've had much more meddling from the American right wing that has actually tried to actively stifle voting. We don't talk about them as much as we should. That should be the main focus of a lot of these investigations, is that, yes, you know what we should do? We should actually look into strengthening our elections. And by doing so, by, again, universal voter registration, hand-counted paper ballots, simple things like that, getting rid of those voting machines, making sure that everybody is registered, making sure that everybody has a voting holiday, eliminating the Electoral College. That is another fantastic way to be able to protect and make sure that our elections have actual integrity. If we're not actually doing these things, if the people in the center, the centrist, whatever donut Twitter, the ones that are screaming so much about Russia, don't actually acquiesce and try to do these simple demands and these simple changes, then they're not actually legitimately worried about interference in our elections. And they're just using it to push a political narrative. That narrative would be used to, of course, shut down the left, shut down certain free speech in America, shut down progressive political opinions, and on and on and on. So yes, we have to fight against that. While Russian meddling is absolutely true, and I do believe that they did meddle in this election, we have ways of protecting our elections that we should enact. And I think at the end of the day, we do have an issue with overhyping and over-dramatizing the impact without actually coming up with real solutions. And we need to work on the solutions part. And going to war with another country, not a solution. Okay. Oh, one more thing, too. Superdelegates. Ban them. We got to get rid of the superdelegates. Okay. Moving on. I don't think that's it. Following the revelation that Robert Mueller is now seeking more and more documents related to President Trump, Trump on Monday unleashed a furious tweet storm accusing, and you're not going to believe this, accusing President Obama of working with the Russians. This is awesome. Now, Trump had tweeted, "Why did the Obama administration start an investigation into the Trump campaign with zero proof of wrongdoing long before the election in November? Wanted to discredit so Crooked H would win." He also said, unprecedented, bigger than Watergate, plus Obama did nothing about Russian meddling. Oh my God, see? The Russians were meddling in our election, and now, look, Donald Trump is even saying it, but he's saying, well, it wasn't us that were helped. No, it was Obama that let the Russians meddle in the election so that I would win, even though Obama was on the side of crooked Hillary. Okay. Look, maybe I'm not getting his train of thought here. Although I do believe his train of thought derailed. Probably at the start of the track. And has been off the track ever since. But okay, so let's break this down. So he's saying that the Obama administration started an investigation into the Trump campaign before the election. But wait, no, that actually didn't happen. The FBI investigation into the Trump campaign was not revealed until months after Trump had actually been elected president. Not only that, but during that, and look, I remember covering this, right? James Comey did reveal that his agency was taking a look at Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server 11 days before the election. You know how I know that? Because that's one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton blames on losing the election. She blames Comey, she blames Russia, she blames the Bernie bros. She doesn't blame the Electoral College, which I think is very, very interesting because had we not had an Electoral College, there would be President Hillary Clinton right now. I wonder why she does not go after the Electoral College. I wonder why she has not actually said, let's eliminate the Electoral College. Let's actually go to a true democracy. Hey, man, I'm just asking questions. Okay. But look, Comey is one of the reasons that she blames on losing the election. Which is funny because, again, Comey would have admitted that, oh, right, we're also investigating Donald Trump's campaign. But they're not. Now, on the Obama thing, Now, this is interesting. Obama, bigger than Watergate. Obama did nothing about meddling. He knew there was meddling. There was meddling. Okay, well, yes, they actually did know. Why didn't they do anything? Well, it turns out Mitch McConnell, the Republicans, decided that they weren't going to do anything about this. In fact, a former White House official, chief of staff to former President Obama on Sunday, said the Obama administration's response to Russian interference in the 2016 election was, quote, watered down. Now, this is Dennis McDonough, sorry, and he told Meet the Press host Chuck Todd that a few months before the 2016 election, the president asked the four party leaders to join the White House in drafting a statement to respond to Russia. Now, on the insistence of now Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, this response was dramatically watered down. Now, that's very interesting. Former Vice President Joe Biden also talked about McConnell. He said, quote, so we went up to, and Mitch McConnell, who I get on with well and is a smart guy. First of all, no, he's not a good guy. He's not a smart guy. He's an asshole. Be honest, Joe. This is why we don't like centrist Democrats, because they're like, oh, see, look at that. Mitch McConnell, such a nice guy, such a smart guy. We got on so well. That's because you both work together to screw the American people. But anyway, he says, Mitch McConnell wanted no part of having a bipartisan commitment that we would say, essentially, Russia is doing this, stop. McConnell's lack of cooperation, Biden said, kept him and Obama from speaking out publicly about Russian meddling in the 2016 elections. Look, now you could say, of course, that, oh, come on, he's just saying that now because President Trump is, of course, blaming Obama. Look, I don't know. Maybe that's a possibility. Maybe he's saying that because he's running for office. I don't know, right? I'm not really too concerned about the motivation. The way that I see it is politicians all have terrible motivations. Most of them anyway. And that motivation is to get more power, is to become more wealthy and things like that. So, look, you should not trust anything most politicians have to say. I think that is an unspoken rule, or should be an unspoken rule at this point. Nonetheless, is it a surprise that Mitch McConnell would not say anything about that or try to water down the response? No, not at all. Because in the end, doesn't matter what happened. If Trump wins, he's going to get his way. And what happened? He got his way. He got his tax cuts. He's got tax cuts, deregulation. Look, Donald Trump, despite their protestations of some Republicans, he has been very, very good on the policy side when it comes to Republican priorities. Again, deregulation and gigantic tax cuts for the rich. The only thing that they've done is basically take Republicans' already racism, bigotry, homophobia, all that stuff, anti-immigrant fervor, and he's just made it much more visible. He took the dog whistle and made it into a human whistle. We can all hear it. We can all hear what the GOP stands for. We all know already. He has filled the swamp with Goldman Sachs, the global financial elite in which the Republicans and some corporate Democrats work for. So why would McConnell say anything? That's his nominee. And that nominee was, look, most people didn't see it in the media. Most people didn't believe it in the media that Donald Trump had a chance of winning the election. The pollsters absolutely got it wrong. But there's a lot of people that knew or that had an idea that Donald Trump had a real big chance of winning the election. Was Mitch McConnell going to ruin that? Absolutely not. Because in the end, he knew that he was going to get his way. So, no, I'm not surprised at all, and neither should you be. So, there's Trump responding to Mueller. Oh boy. All right, so I'm going to do I'm going to go to a break here. We'll come back. We got more show for you guys. So stay right here around the nation. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, Around the Nation, right here, TOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Appreciate it. You know, the weird thing that I've noticed is that this stream on YouTube has already been demonetized. That's weird. That's weird, but not at all, I guess, surprising based on, I mean, what we've seen YouTube do before. So, the demonetization continues. And they continue, of course, to try to go after independent creators. Not good. All right. Moving on here. We're still not quite done with Trump, but we'll get done with that soon. One more story here in this block, and then we'll move on to other really important stuff. All right. Madness. So the Washington Post here with a great article about some of the instability going on in the White House. Yes, instability in the White House. That should not be a surprise to you because it has never not been unstable. But look, they're saying that it's actually even more unstable now than it was before due to the recent shakeup. Now that includes Hope Hicks leaving, McMaster possibly being pushed out. In fact, they're trying to find another post for General McMaster. So again, it all seems to be falling apart. Now, this of course comes from interviews with 22 White House officials, friends and advisors to the president, and other administration allies, most of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss Trump's state of mind. Oh boy. So now, according to them, these are the darkest days in at least a half a year, they say, and they worry just how much farther the President Trump and the administration may plunge into unrest and malaise before they start to recover. Again, this has been a race to the bottom ever since Trump became president. As one official put it, quote, "We haven't bottomed out." I got news for you. I've been saying this before. There is no bottom. They're going to keep going further and further down into the depths of madness. Because, unfortunately, Trump has no bottom, and he will continue to go further and further down into madness. Now, they say that Trump is a president in transition, at times angry and increasingly isolated. He fumes in private that just about every time he looks up at a television screen, the cable news headlines are trumpeting yet another scandal. Well, here's a suggestion. Don't have so many goddamn scandals. You can actually stop that by not being scandalous. Just saying. Now, he also voices frustration that son-in-law Jared Kushner has few honor defenders. He revives old grudges, and he confides to friends that he is uncertain with whom to trust. So that's very interesting because, look, Kushner has had a very, very bad week. Turns out, Jared Kushner is incredibly corrupt. Wow, didn't see that coming. I mean, the fact that he, before, like, pushing to have a blockade of Qatar, or Qatar, or however you say it, he tried getting money, soliciting money from the finance minister of Qatar. Again, so that was that entire blockade, or lining up to get the United States behind that blockade that's being pushed by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Jared Kushner helped write up the memo that got Trump to support that blockade. All because they wouldn't loan him $500 million for his investments. And now, of course, he's had his security clearance revoked. And that, of course, is in part to the fact that a lot of these other countries saw Kushner as somebody who could be easily manipulated. Wonderful. So, is it any wonder why Kushner doesn't have any on-air defenders? Well, look, here's the other thing about this. Kushner, what does he do? What does he bring to the table? He didn't bring anything to the table. He's there because of, I don't know, some misguided form of nepotism. Basically, well, all nepotism, of course, is misguided, but he doesn't do anything there. He and Ivanka are basically dead weight. And no wonder that Trump, of course, privately talked with Kelly to try and figure out a way to push them out. So, now, that, of course, only adds to the instability here. Now, so concerned are those around Trump that some of the president's oldest friends have been urging one another to be in touch. The sort of familiar contacts that often lift his spirits. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, apparently, to some of Trump's advisors. He says he has been pleased with the news coverage of his role in the gun debate, and lighthearted moments have leavened his days, such as a recent huddle with staff to prepare his comedic routine for the Gridiron, a Saturday night dinner with Washington officials and journals. So, now on the gun debate, no, wait a minute here. Now, look, I don't have the video for you guys, but when he was talking to Democrats, here's Nancy Pelosi getting all giddy. Like, oh, I can't believe we're going to get some actual gun reform with Donald Trump. No, you idiot. He's not going to actually do anything about gun control. It's not actually going to work. Because, look, a day after he had that meeting with the Democrats, he went and met with the NRA, and then, oh, look at that, suddenly he backtracked. Suddenly he's not so much in favor of gun control. Now he's a strong Second Amendment guy. He has no principles. And he can be swayed very, very easily because he doesn't know anything. And guy doesn't have an original thought in his head. The only thought that he has in his head is Trump, Trump, Trump. That's it. What am I going to get out of this? Where's my name going to be mentioned? You know, who's going to sing my praises? That's all Trump cares about. So, of course, he sees positive coverage of him. And he's like, oh, my God. I love it. I love it. Let me see more. Let me see more. Oh, I'm upset that they're not talking good about me on the cable television. Since he watches 6 hours of cable TV a day. But it's all got to be about him. All got to be about him. Now, Trump's friends, they say, are increasingly concerned about his well-being, worrying that the president's obsession with cable commentary and perceived slights is taking a toll on the 71-year-old. One exasperated ally lamented that this is, quote, pure madness. I think the president is starting to wobble in his emotional stability, and it's not going to end well. Trump's judgment is fundamentally flawed, and the more pressure put on him, the more isolated he becomes. I think his ability to do harm is going to increase. Damn. Now, Trump has been asking people close to him whether they think Kushner has done anything wrong, according to a senior administration official. Two advisors said the president repeatedly tells aides the Russia investigation will not ensnare him, even as it ensnares others around him. As I just mentioned in an earlier story, now you have Robert Mueller, who's asking for more and more documents for people that are directly in his orbit and involving him himself, which is making the investigation also more about him. Interesting. And he thinks the American people are starting to conclude that the Democrats, as opposed to his campaign, colluded with the Russians. Again, we'll have to see proof of both at this point. Now, still, the developments have delivered one negative headline after another, leading Trump to lose his cool, especially in the evenings and early mornings, when he is often most isolated. Well, yes, that's when he's having his executive time, where he sits and watches Fox and Friends, eats cheeseburgers, and calls up his buddies. So, look, that's what's going on in the White House. And President Trump, he's isolated, he's angry, he thinks everybody is out to get him, which I guess is partly true, and he doesn't know who he can trust. This whole thing is a meltdown. Again, madness. I mean, look, he's even going after his. He's even going after Jeff Sessions, right? Now Sessions called him Mr. Magoo. Who goes after their own attorney general? Donald Trump does, because he didn't think he was sufficiently loyal. So he's like, I can't trust Sessions. I can't trust pretty much anybody in this White House. It's insane what's going on here. It's absolutely insane. In fact, look, his own staff, for one, his own staff thinks they don't listen to my advice. What's the point of talking to Trump when he's not actually going to listen to what we're saying? And morale, well, according to a Republican strategist, he says, quote, morale is the worst it's ever been. Nobody knows what to expect. Well, that's true. To there I say, look, expect the unexpected. That's exactly what you're going to get with Trump, because Trump doesn't even know what Trump is going to do next. We're dealing with somebody who you can't just put into a box. You're dealing with somebody who's incredibly unpredictable. And look, he thrived on this chaos when he was running his own business. Well, at least according to him, he thrived on this chaos. His businesses, not so much, because 6 of them went bankrupt. He is absolutely inept. So, look, man, and that's what he's bringing to the White House. That's what he has brought to the White House. If you think that's ever going to change, it's not. No, it's going to continue being a disaster. The only question is, how much is he going to destroy in the meantime? Okay. Let's move on. I think I've talked about Trump enough. Let's go to the teacher strike. Union members in West Virginia are now entering the second week of the teacher strike. Now, according to the American Federation of Teachers West Virginia, they will continue until they get their pay raise that they were actually promised. Now, that's weird because I thought that they had actually received that pay raise. Earlier, Jim Justice, governor, had actually said, okay, we're going to relent. We're going to give them that 5% that they actually are owed. So, look, we're going to raise their pay and everything should be back. We're going to get everybody back in the classroom, right, where they belong. And it turns out Republicans in West Virginia said, not so fast. Now, the Republican-controlled Senate voted on Saturday evening to approve the lower pay raise. This is a pay raise of 4%, bucking teachers, Republican Jim Justice, in the Republican-controlled House, which approved a 5% raise last Wednesday. So they said, yeah, your 5% raise, no, not going to happen. We're going to do a 4%. Now, before that, they were saying, oh, don't worry, teachers. We're going to take care of you. Just go ahead and go back to work. It turns out, no. Them not going back to work and them the unions making the decision to not go back to work actually worked out in their favor. Because if they had gone back to work, they would have been screwed out of that 1%. So it's good that they continue their walkout. Now, House members later Saturday would not agree to the Senate's moves, and the two bills now have to be reconciled by a legislative conference committee. So now what do the Republicans want? Oh, well, we're not going to spend money on teachers because we got to be fiscally responsible. Well, you're not fiscally responsible when you give massive tax cuts to rich people. And when you do massive spending on corporations and corporate subsidies. Try to tell a Republican that, and they're not going to believe you. They'll be like, no, this is absolutely responsible. Spending money on the damn teachers, that's not responsible. Ridiculous, right? Now, look, you might be wondering, why do we need to give West Virginia teachers a raise? I mean, is it really that important? Well, look, in the case of West Virginia, and look, I'm somebody who believes that teachers should be paid much, much better than they are already. But West Virginia is especially bad when it comes to teacher pay. In fact, they have among the lowest in the nation. I think they're 48 out of 50. Pay starts at about $33,000 a year. Now, look, to be a teacher, you have to go through all sorts of education. You have to be highly educated. You have to go through college. You have to pay for that. And look, being a teacher isn't exactly a glamorous job to begin with. And to be paid $33,000 a year, that's much, much lower than some of the surrounding states. So, yes, they deserve to get a raise. Not only that, but look, they had 4 years without a pay increase. All the while, their insurance rates continue to go up. There are teachers that now have to have 2 jobs. In fact, a 31-year-old teacher from Gilbert, West Virginia, told the New York Times, quote, I take care of the bills in my family, and I knew I can't afford it. I can't. I have 2 children. I live paycheck to paycheck. So this is what we're doing to the teachers. We're making sure that these teachers aren't able to live. We're not paying them enough. And we're not really putting education at the forefront like we actually should. So, no, this is great because this teacher strike is great because this is how you actually try to get things done. More teachers need to do this. Because again, I've talked about how teachers are not paid enough. We don't respect education enough. And what we need to do is, well, look, this is the whole point of unions, by the way. Unions actually get people concessions. Like before, from Republicans, they were able to get a 4% or 5% raise. And then some Republicans, of course, were like, no, we're not going to do that. Look, you wouldn't have this fight. You wouldn't have these raises if it weren't for unions. And that's why they're important. That's why public sector unions and private sector unions are important. Who's going to argue on your behalf without a union? Are you going to do it? You're going to stand up to a corporation? And you're going to get fired. That's what's going to happen. You can't stand up to a corporation and their army of lawyers. But you know what? A union can. So, look, I have huge respect for these teachers, for their union. They're actually standing up for what they actually deserve, which is decent pay that will allow them to live and to be able to pay their bills and then to go on and to educate the next generation, because that's probably one of the most important jobs that you could have today. And we need to get behind them. So, okay. Let's move on. Speaking of teachers, I just talked them up, and now I'm going to go after one of them. It's amazing how that works. Okay. A Florida teacher has been fired from her classroom after a report that she had been secretly doing a white supremacist podcast. Fascinating. Now, the Citrus County School District north of Tampa announced on Sunday that social studies teacher Diana Volatich would not be teaching while officials had investigated her after a HuffPost report that she hosted a podcast that shares white nationalist ideas. And of course, the result of that investigation is now she is no longer a teacher. The Human Resources Department was notified and an investigation was initiated immediately. The district said in a statement on Sunday, the teacher has been removed from the classroom and the investigation is ongoing. So I want to show you a tweet here from the Citrus County School District on Miss Volatich. Let's take a look here. So on Friday, March 2nd, 2018, the Citrus County School was made aware of a concerning podcast by a Huffington Post reporter. The reporter indicated to believe one of the persons participating in the podcast was a teacher at Crystal River Middle School. The Human Resources Department was notified and the investigation was initiated immediately. The teacher has been removed from the classroom and the investigation ongoing. Pursuant to Florida statute, and an open investigation and materials related to it are exempt from public record and cannot be discussed until the investigation is complete. Now, that Huffington Post report on Saturday said that Volatich had hosted a podcast called Unapologetic. Well, I mean, if you have deeply racist views, then I guess that is a perfect name, because in doing this podcast, you were apparently very, very unapologetic at being a complete racist. Now, she used the alias Tanya Dalichov, and so that was her pseudonym in doing this podcast. And during one episode, she talked about how she shared white nationalist ideas in the classroom and how she decided to hide those beliefs from school officials. Now, to give you an example of the kind of stuff that she talked about on that podcast, that she might have actually translated and brought over to the classroom. And that's the most concerning part. Like, I don't care if you have these horrific views and you do a podcast. Whatever, man. I don't care for podcasts. Like, I don't want it to get shut down. I don't care if she hasn't. What I care about is her teaching impressionable minds. Now, this is the kind of stuff that she'd talk about. Now, she tweeted from a Dalichov Twitter account. So she used that pseudonym and different social media handles to, of course, plug her podcast and things like that. She said that terror attacks will continue until, quote, we eradicate Muslims from the face of the earth. So she's okay with going after 1.1 billion people. Wipe 1.1 billion people from the earth. Look, if all Muslims were terrorists, who do you think would be would be wiped out? It would be us. And so, but look, it's even more horrific when you think about it, because here she's talking about wiping out like I said, 1.1 billion people. That's how many Muslims are in the world, right? Based on the actions of a very small few amount of Muslims who actually do engage in terrorism. That is gross. She's a gross person. And no, I wouldn't want her educating, like if I had children. I wouldn't want them being educated by that kind of person and putting those kinds of white supremacist ideas into my kids' heads? Insanity. So they made the right decision to not bring her back to the classroom. And of course, getting rid of her is probably the best thing that they could do. Okay. Couple more stories here. Now, a new investigation out found that the number of weapons supplied. Oh, hold on. Let me start that again. A new report has now confirmed that a lot of the weapons that end up in the hands of ISIS actually come from the United States and Saudi Arabia. Surprise. So, actually, not surprised. Now, this field investigation into the origins of ISIS weaponry in Syria and Iraq has found that weapons supplied by the U.S. and Saudi Arabia to the Syrian opposition often ended up in the hands of jihadis, enhancing the quantity and quality of their armaments. Now, this same report, according which comes from the Conflict Armament Research Center, this was published on last Thursday. It found that while most of their arms were captured from the Syrian and Iraqi armies, there was a large number of U.S. and Saudi weapons in their arsenal that went far beyond those that would have been available through battle capture alone. Now, what does this say? Basically, it's saying, look, we arm Syrian opposition groups, and it's very likely that Syrian opposition groups gave those guns to ISIS. Why? Because we don't know who those Syrian opposition groups actually are. A lot of them actually are terrorist groups. And here we had Republicans and some Democrats that were like, oh, no, let's go and arm the Syrian rebels. Well, who are the rebels? Do we know who they are? And why should we get involved at all? That's not our war. The best thing that we could do is actually take in refugees and do humanitarian aid. We should not be getting involved and dropping bombs. Unfortunately, that's what we're doing. And we're also supplying arms to Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, Saudi Arabia is now dropping on Yemen. So that's what we have. Now, the researchers found that Iraq and Syria have seen ISIS forces use large numbers of weapons supplied by states such as Saudi Arabia and the United States against the various international anti-ISIS coalitions that the two states support. Now, what's our biggest ally in the region against ISIS? That's the Kurdish militia. So, look, we have supported the Kurdish militia, and the Kurdish militias have actually been incredibly effective against ISIS. Now, that brings another wrinkle into this, is that Turkey is not a fan of Kurdish militias, and so now they are attacking the Kurds because they don't want to have a heavily armed militia next door that they believe is a terrorist group. So, look, the whole region is messed up. And then you introduce more of our weapons into it, and it gets even more messed up. Now, the U.S. and Saudi supplied weapons were all manufactured in EU countries, and Washington and Riyadh had broken contractual clauses prohibiting their transfer, according to the CAR report. Evidence collected by CAR indicates the United States repeatedly diverted EU-manufactured weapons and ammunition to opposition forces in the Syrian conflict. ISIS forces rapidly gained custody of the significant quantities of this material. Now, again, that's because we don't know who the opposition is. We arm them, and they quickly turn around to arm ISIS, probably because they are ISIS. We shouldn't be involved. Why are we involved? It does us no good to be involved in these ridiculous conflicts. Now, I'm not saying that, and this report does not actually say that most of the weapons came from the U.S. And the EU. I just want to point out that at the analysis of more than 40,000 items that were found in total, found that 90% of the weapons and ammunition were actually made in Russia, China, and Eastern Europe. So it's not just us arming people in that area. It's other countries. It's loose arms from, look, Russia. I'm not saying that they're arming them completely. I'm saying that there's a lot of armaments that have gone around since the fall of the Soviet Union. So you've got all that weaponry floating around. You got people that want to make money off arms contracts and things like that. Look, there's a lot of guns floating around out there. And is it a surprise that a lot of it falls into the hands of terrorist groups? Shouldn't be at all. So, and the last thing that they need is more weapons from us. So maybe we should stop arming the world. Okay. One more. Nope. There we go. Thoughts and prayers. So now after every mass shooting, there are Republicans that come out and say, no, what we need to do is we need thoughts and prayers. And it's not just the Republicans. A Democratic memo that I covered on the show recently also said they basically warned Democrats not to do anything and just advocate for thoughts and prayers. So wonderful. Now we have both sides saying, don't do anything about guns. No. Let's do thoughts and prayers. Now, we have somebody in Florida who was a state senator who voted against an assault weapons ban, right? Who is taking thoughts and prayers to an even bigger extreme. Now she's saying that thoughts and prayers aren't just good for the victims, for the survivors, but that it's the only thing that can actually stop gun violence. Watch.
If I thought for one moment that if we banned assault weapons, then all of these tragedies would end, you would have me, I would be with you. But are we going to ban fertilizer, which is what they used in the Oklahoma bombing? Are we going to ban pressure cookers, which is what they used in the Boston massacre? Are we going to ban the multiple handguns that were used in other assaults? Are we going to ban the sawed-off shotguns, is what was used in Columbine? It's not the weapon. It's the evil from within. And unfortunately, Senator Stewart said at the very beginning of her debate, when we say thoughts and prayers, it's frowned upon. And I take real offense at that, because thoughts and prayers are really the only thing that's going to stop the evil from within the individual who is taking up their arms to do this kind of a massacre. So I will continue to do the thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers are the only thing to stop the evil inside of a mass shooting. Oh. Now, I love that. She says, are we going to ban fertilizer? Are we going to ban pressure cookers? Are we going to ban handguns? Why don't we just ban murder? I mean, murder is a crime. Obviously, if we ban people from murdering, then they will stop murdering. God, it's so stupid. By the way, you know what we actually do? We don't ban fertilizer. We don't ban pressure cookers. You know what we do? We actually regulate. Now, for example, fertilizer is regulated. In fact, anybody who buys, sells, or transfers 25 pounds of ammonium nitrate, which is fertilizer that was used in the Oklahoma City bombing, after that bombing, it is now a rule that anybody who buys more than 25 pounds of ammonium nitrate has to register that with the Department of Homeland Security. That would be regulation. Now, not only that, but ammonium nitrate facilities must also keep records of sales or transfers of the chemical for at least 2 years after each transaction. Because, again, ammonium nitrate is highly explosive. So, yes, re-regulate. See, here's the thing. The progressive position is not to ban everything. Now, there are certainly some things that should be banned. For example, we ban machine guns. Or at least we make it very, very difficult to get a machine gun. That has effectively taken machine guns out of circulation. So there's an argument that actually works. And we also had a so-called assault weapons ban back in the 90s. And guess what? We did not have people continuously shooting up schools with assault weapons because it effectively took them out of circulation so that people could not get their hands on them to do these types of mass shootings. Now, on pressure cookers, we don't regulate pressure cookers, by the way. Well, I mean, we do, but not quite to the way that we would regulate ammonium nitrate, because pressure cookers have they have a secondary use. Actually, a primary use, and that is to cook delicious food. So that's a ridiculous point to begin with. But look, what she's saying is, don't do anything about the guns. No. We can't do anything about the guns. What we need to do is we need to focus on thoughts and prayers. And do thoughts and prayers even more. And this is after she rejected the assault rifle ban. Now, the thing is that in Florida, they passed a ban, and then a little bit later, they repealed it. Now, it's not just thoughts and prayers, though. To be fair to this woman, she does have some thoughts on it. She says she wants to raise the minimum wage for gun purchases from 18 to 21. Okay. And then proposes mental health checks for individuals with threatening behavior. She also says that she wants to catch mass shooters early, and says that it's up to us to try to change the trajectory of their life when they come from a broken home or whatever situation that they've had to help them not have the desire to do these kinds of acts. Now, they also want to arm teachers, and that's something that they're looking at. But out of all of these other proposals, she says that none of the actions will be as effective as thoughts and prayers. She says, quote, "In my opinion, the one thing that will actually change this the most is the one thing that has become fighting words, which is to say thoughts and prayers. So that's something I'm going to continue to add to my comprehensive plan so we can hopefully stop the evil that is happening from within our world." Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. Here's more thoughts and prayers for you guys. Oh, and a little bit of modest gun control, which actually isn't gun control at all. Okay, so look, there is some research that's going on now. Look, it's actually very hard for people to do research on gun violence because there's no federal funding. So Rand Corporation took a look at the effects of gun laws, and this is a nonpartisan think tank, and they looked at it. This is a 2-year dive into the research on gun violence and laws trying to stop gun violence. And here's what they found. He said that there's moderate evidence that background checks reduce suicide and violent crime. That's good. Limited evidence that prohibitions associated with mental illness reduce suicide. Moderate evidence that those prohibitions reduce violent crime. And supportive evidence that child access prevention laws reduce suicides and unintentional injuries and deaths. Now, one thing that they stress in this report is that we need much more research, and we need actually the federal government to lift its moratorium on federal funding for this research. Now, they also added that there is limited evidence that concealed carry laws increase violent crime, and unintentional injuries and deaths. There is moderate evidence that stand your ground laws, NRA-backed measures that expand when someone can use a gun to defend themselves, increase violent crime. Now, overall, they've come to the conclusion, based on the evidence that they have so far, and they are not being 100% definitive. So I just have to note that because they are calling for much more research, and they're not taking a stance on whether we should have gun control. So they're just looking at the data. They said that restrictive laws seem to lead to fewer gun deaths, while more permissive laws lead to more gun deaths. So, look, it shouldn't take a genius to figure out that if you have looser gun laws, you're going to have more shootings with guns. That if you have tighter gun laws, that you have less shootings with guns. Or when you have less guns, you have less shootings. When you have more guns, you have more shootings. This is common sense. But here in America, we have thrown common sense out the window, and now we're like, oh no, no, more guns will actually make it safer because we're all pointing guns at each other, and that we're all pretty sure that somebody isn't going to get scared and flinch and then fire off about 20 rounds, or that somebody's not going to sneeze and accidentally shoot off their gun, and that everybody's going to be perfectly safe as long as we're all locked, loaded, and armed, and all pointing guns at each other. That's not the real world. That is a terrible world that I do not want to live in. Again, if it does happen, it's very likely that I'll probably end up getting shot. Most likely accidentally, when somebody sneezes and their gun goes off. Or might accidentally shoot myself because I'm clumsy. So, look, we do need gun control. Now, again, I'm not saying ban all guns. We're not saying ban all guns. What we are, just like the fertilizer example, is we're saying that we should put some regulations. Regulations meaning, hey, let's, I don't know, have better background check systems. Let's ban the bump stocks and, you know, other things that make it easier to turn a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic rifle. We should regulate who gets it, who's able to get these guns, and what, waiting periods and things like that. In a a database where you have to register for a gun, things like that. I mean, for Christ's sakes, in America you have to register to vote. But you don't have to register to get a gun. It's insanity. And no amount of thoughts and prayers is going to stop the insanity. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. As you can see, all sorts of insanity in the news today. All right. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Subscribe to the channel. We have live streams every day, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here, TYT Nation. If you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/TYT Nation to support us. It's independent progressive media over at patreon.com/TYT Nation. Thank you for those who do support the show. You're awesome, amazing, and I love you guys. All right, everybody. Thank you for going on the nation with me today. Make sure to join me tomorrow on the show. And, of course, as always, send me suggestions over Twitter at Jeff's Politics. All right, everybody. Love you guys. Thank you for watching. And remember, change begins with you. Night, TYT Nation.